Welcome back to Vault Initiative International. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about functions in Python. So, what are functions? Functions are a named block of code that are designed to do one specific job. So, if you want to use a task which is defined in a function, you just have to call the name of the function responsible for it. For instance, in Python, when you are needed to perform a specific task over and over again, instead of writing the code over and over again, you just have to call the function which is responsible for that. This makes coding in Python very easy. Now, let's talk about types of functions we have. So we have two main types of functions, which are the inbuilt functions and the created functions. We'll talk about the created functions later. Now let's talk about the inbuilt functions. Normally, the inbuilt functions are the functions which are stored in the Python library, which are, we have the print function, we have the max function, we have the .lower function. So the print function basically displays output. For instance, we want to display maybe your name, hello Michael. We use the print function to display this output as seen in the console here. So these are functions which are already pre-built in the Python library. Now let's talk about creating a function in Python. For instance, you've created a program and you need a program to greet the user each time the user opens the program. So let's say print hello Michael. Now this print function will act based on manual input. So after typing the greeting into the print function, you have to run it by yourself. But then we want the program itself to automatically display the greetings to the user. This is when the Python function comes into play. So in creating a function in Python, we have a keyword called the def keyword, which is def keywords. This def keyword is used to define a function in Python. So after defining the def keyword, you bring the name you want to use for the function. So let's name the function as greet user. After every function, you need to bring a parenthesis. Parentheses are used to identify functions. Then after that, you bring a colon. So basically, what this function does is to display hello Michael each time the function is called. Now we are going to place an indent here and try to call the function and see. By calling the function, you have to type the function name, which is greet user, and let's run the program. So we could see here that hello Michael, or the greeting, was displayed in the console here, which means we've created the function which automatically generates the greeting each time this name is called. However, after creating this function, we could see that the output of this function has been restricted, in the sense that it only prints hello Michael. What if the user's name is Jack? So in this instance, Python gives us the flexibility to include input characters in function. So let's go ahead and add an input character to this function. So instead of making this function print only Michael, we want this function to print the name that it's inputted. So we are going to use the parentheses in the function, the defined function. So inside this parentheses, we are going to place an argument in the function. So in this context, we'll call the argument name. So inside this defined function, we are going to use the argument, which is the name. The argument placed inside the parentheses signifies that the function is ready to receive input and work with it. So we are going to edit the print statement here in order to accommodate the argument. So we apply an f string and specify the argument here. So after modifying this function, we'll go ahead and try it out. So we'll print the function again, greet user. And also we could see that Python already gives you a display of the function you just created, which means that this function has automatically been saved in the Python library. So we can see that inside the parentheses, Python signifies as that there's an input to be made. So we'll type in our input character, let's say Jack, in a string format, then print it out. So in the console, we saw that it printed out what we placed inside the parentheses, which is the input character. So in a nutshell, functions come in two forms. We have functions that need input and functions that does not need input. So with functions that does not need input, you need not to specify the argument in the parentheses. You just have to leave the parentheses like that. But with functions that needs input, you have to specify an argument. And Python functions can accommodate as many input variables as possible. So let's say in this context, we can add another argument, which is age. So after adding this age, we go ahead and use the age. So let's modify this statement. Let's say hello Michael, hello, your age is, then specify the age here. So let's go ahead and run the function again. So now the function requires two input variables, which is the name and age. So firstly, we type the age, we type the name, Jack here. Then we specify the age, let's say 21, and we print it out. So it's printed here in the console just as we wanted it. But what if we interchange the name and the age when printing out the function? So let's say instead of Jack here, we write in the age rather, so 21, and we put the name at where the age is supposed to be, which is Jack. Let's print it out. So you could see that the name and the age were used interchangeably here in the console. So this brings us to positional argument and keyword argument. The positional argument is a default way which Python interprets input characters. So Python displays the input character just as the argument is displayed here. But keyword argument comes with the variable and its value. So let's try to use the keyword argument here. So with the keyword argument, you specify the variable or the argument and its value. So we specify maybe the age, which is the variable or the argument, then we specify the value. Then we come here and specify the name, which is the variable or the argument, then we specify its value. So the keyword argument can be used regardless of the position of the argument, and it will be printed out. So you can see here that it's printed out, hello Jack, your age is 21. So finally, we are going to talk about return values in Python. So return values is a property of function in Python. We tend to return the values of a function. A function doesn't always have to display its output directly. Instead, it can process some data and then return the value or set the values. The value the function returns is called the return value. The return statement takes a value from inside a function and send it back to the line that called the function. So let's go ahead to use this property in Python, which is the return value. So we'll go ahead and create a function to calculate the summation of three numbers. So we will define our function by using the def keyword, and we'll provide our name of the function. Let's say summation, and provide our arguments. So we name the arguments n1, n2, n3, and end it with a colon. So here we are going to add all the arguments under the summation or under the function called summation. So n1 plus n2 plus n3. So in order to use the return keyword, we would have to type return at the beginning of this statement. So return here. So what this function does is to calculate the summation of these three numbers and store it on the line on which it was inputted. So let's go ahead to run this function. So we start by assigning it to a variable. Let's say sum is equal to summation. Then we input our argument inside the parentheses, so 2, 3, 4 for instance, and we print the variable out. So we use the print function to print it out. Print sum. So we can see that we get the result of the calculation of these three numbers inside our console. So basically the return statement or the return keyword used under the function gives us the liberty to use the output of a function for further manipulation. So for instance, I could further use this value, which is a sum, which is also equal to 9, for further calculation. So let's say I could divide the sum by 4 and print it out. So inside our console we have our value here. So this brings us to the end of functions under Python. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.